Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Semino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How are you?
Wow, curveball. Oh no. I only have answers prepared for the regular question you asked me back.
It's a variation of what I just said.
I know, it's just so going off book is so surprising to me. So but I'm doing very well, Walt. Thank you for asking. Very, very nice of you. I hope you're all doing as well. Listeners, welcome back to Awesome Truth. Today we are looping back to what used to be the network, now is just the WWE tab on Peacock. So much less exciting to just go to Peacock and scroll through all the office garbage and get to WWE, but that's what we must do. Also depressing to watch this particular show, Walt. I did not like it. We chose it because it's new, and we try and keep up with network offerings, with WWE, digital offerings, whatever the hell you'd call this. But I will say it's called WWE This Is Awesome, and it is not particularly awesome.
And this is not a docuseries on The Miz either.
No, nor on this podcast. It's not them following us around and documenting our day-to-day lives, creating this wonderful show for you all.
Yeah, I forgot. I guess awesome could take many different forms in the WWE.
Our show is
universe.
named after The Miz, too, so in half.
And R-Truth.
And R-Truth, of course, yeah, not to besmirch truth.
Yes, but it's a show, and this is WWE's latest attempt at, trying to parlay popular fan things and then just kind of ruin it. I can't think of a good example. Otherwise, I feel like they've done that before.
I mean, it's you're talking about how it's trying to be hip, right? And now and modern, and basically taking a YouTube show but putting it on. That's basically the gist, right?
Well, it's the materialization of this Steve Buscemi meme where he's like, "Hey, fellow cool kids."
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, oh, no. God.
Yeah, taking a chant, it'd be like saying "fight forever," which I mean, I think other promotions have done that too. But yeah, it's turning a chant into creating content around a chant or a catchphrase or something like that.
One that I really don't like either. This Is Awesome is kind of overdone and not even that. You're not really even saying anything other than I like the thing that I'm watching. And
I'm a wrestling fan who has seen this before and understand what we're all supposed to say at certain points.
I mean, after watching this show, I now cringe when I hear it. Before I was just whatever, but now I'm I really don't like this anymore. It is ruined for me.
I mean, all those chants are fight for they're all pretty stupid. I'm sure I've been to shows and chanted them, and hopefully because I was truly caught up in what was happening, and I was I'm not gonna be the curmudgeon who sits there with his arms folded and doesn't chant when everyone else is chanting. I like the idea of getting caught up in the spectacle and the excitement, but yeah, it feels manufactured at this point. It's what you're supposed to do, and also it goes part and parcel. I feel like I love especially old NXT, NXT of 5-6 years ago, but it feels like that NXT indie type thing that has now also been appropriated, obviously by WWE and NXT, but also larger forms, just this smarky kind of thing that it's not just cheering and booing. It's we have our own little chants, but like you said, now it means nothing anymore. It's just sort of a thing that happened.
NXT fans and the NXT chants, though, just to differentiate This Is Awesome from other things in wrestling that I like, is it specific to a moment and a performer that you're getting behind, right? I mean, when you sing Judas, it's not it's not meaningless. It's oh, this is a thing we're all doing in unison, or Keith Lee, or now with Seth Rollins, people just hum his dumb theme song. It's to me that actually makes sense.
Or Boom, obviously everyone loves saying Boom.
Those things are kind of fun, but just chanting oh, I like wrestling. It's yeah, no shit, you spent $80 on tickets. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on this too much because ultimately, if you I don't want to yuck people's yum. If you are so elated at seeing good wrestling to the point of needing to say that, great. But maybe that's maybe that's a function of like how whatever wrestling has been at certain points in recent history, where it's like we need something to validate why we're still doing this.
Yeah, I get your point. I mean, like I said, I think in the heat of the moment you should chant whatever you want. But I think if you remove the context, which is easy to do, and especially this show, which is what we're tying it back to, is appropriating it, making use of it for its own needs. I think that's where it just gets stupid. You like when you think about it, when you think about a dumb chant that everybody's doing, you're like, oh, that's like what? Like when you're caught up in the moment, you're just responding with 20,000, 15,000 other people. When you think about it, it's just sort of dumb. And like when they use it for this show, they use the word awesome. They're implying this is just like the most incredible things. Like the word awesome literally means like inspiring awe, and it's like, oh wow, I can't imagine what this show will be like. It must be the most groundbreaking, earth-shattering moments in wrestling history. And then it's just a guy named Greggy talking about SummerSlam. It's like it's not nothing. So much about this show and the moments they choose to feature are not awesome. They're things we've seen 100 times before in other documentaries and other mediums. It's not breaking any new ground. I know this is what we say all the time with these network things, but some of them at least try to do something a little different. This is just couldn't be more repetitive and duplicative.
This truly is the oh my god. It's oh my god, but the way they,
which I guess you may remember from early teens DVDs, is that right?
Maybe. I don't even know. I can't remember how long ago it was.
We definitely watched it when I lived with you in Maryland, and I think that was around 2012, and we watched Oh My God.
Hopefully now on DVD.
50. Well, we watched some capacity. We watched some. I remember watching Oh My God moments with you.
Yeah, I mean it was like a special. It was like,
yes.
But the difference though with that it was like a countdown of the 50 best. So at least A, you're doing high volume, and B, it's like you're counting down. So I guess that's a more structure than what we saw in this series. We admittedly only saw 2 of the 4.
I tried to watch a third one and I could not. I was out of gas.
Right, but like just, I guess my question is like, what do we think this is awesome means? Because like to me, it's when I walk into it, I'm like, hey, here's an interesting idea. It's like take matches or moments that aren't necessarily talked about often, but were truly great wrestling moments that you would have fans elicit that chant for. Because we didn't get that.
No, that would have been something if they had said, yeah, like moment, like I know they can't do that for everything, but yeah, if they'd pulled times where fans actually were compelled to lose their minds, that would have been one thing.
Or just like mat classics that like have kind of got lost in the sands of time because of just all the last 30 years of SummerSlams, for example. One of the episodes was SummerSlam. It's like, oh, it would have been cool to revisit like some really big wrestling moments that fans lost their shit over because it was like actually pretty iconic, but ultimately there's just so much fucking wrestling content that they kind of get forgotten. Like I can get behind that idea, like, and I could give you rattle off 10 SummerSlam matches that fit that bill, but instead we kind of got like just like
we got Jon Stewart hitting John Cena with a chair, and it's like no one thought that was awesome then or now.
Yeah, I mean that was exactly.
That was perplexing and confusing and bad, is what it was. But it wasn't awesome.
I'm not sure what we're qualifying awesome as anymore, because that was unequivocally not awesome.
You know what I felt like? I don't know what they're going for. I think the show you outlined right now, which is essentially the same banner, same moniker, but just like actual unique moments that have not been documented elsewhere. I would love to watch that show. Like if maybe that's not what this has to be, but like at a certain point you just really wonder when they're going to stop regurgitating the same stuff. Like something comes to mind. I would love for them to have done something where it was like most incredible, like almost upsets or something like that, where it's like, show me 1 2 3 Kid Razor Ramon, that's fine. Show me the time that Neville hit the what was it called, the Falcon Arrow in WWE, is that right?
Uh, z-
Broken Arrow?
no, Falcon Arrow is the thing that Rollins does, right? Oh, no,
Yes. What is
okay.
Neville's finisher?
Black Arrow.
The Red Arrow?
Yeah,
Red
boy.
Arrow, the Arrow, whatever. It's called something else. I think it might be called Black Arrow in AEW now. But remember when he hit it on Seth on Raw and almost won the title? But Seth put his foot on the rope, and so no one's ever kicked out of it. But Seth, like, found a way to survive and then ultimately won the match. Like, show me stuff like that. Show me something that I haven't seen before that is buried in the archives, but people remember it because it was cool at the moment, and it doesn't get brought up a million times over and over again. Like, one thing I really appreciated this show doing, the SummerSlam episode. And if you haven't picked up by now, this is awesome. Just shows you a bunch of clips, and there's a man named Greggy, and he talks about them. So it's really loose in terms of structure. But
tons of talking heads.
Yes, and lots of talking heads. A lot of Ezekiel, a lot of some guy I've never heard of, like outside non-WWE people who they don't introduce in any way. Like, we know Sam Roberts, we know those, but like a couple people I've literally never heard of who are just talking about the show, which could have been you and I, which we like to know. Like, we could have just been a talking head who would notice or care. Yeah. But they show Honky Tonk Man Ultimate Warrior from SummerSlam. And I saw that and said, "What? That's great! Like that's not uncommon of a thing here to discuss, but it is unique and exciting and different and special. Like it had something going for it. It isn't shown over and over and over again. Like and because the bulk of it is them talking about Honky Tonk Man and how he was a 400-day champion and he was a chicken shit heel and he was really fun. Like I'd rather talk about Honky Tonk Man than talk about Shawn Michaels or Undertaker. Like maybe that's just because I'm so in the weeds with this stuff that I just can't handle, the same old. But I just feel like there's anyone who has Peacock for the network, I just don't know why they wouldn't want to see something out of left field as opposed to something they've seen 6 times otherwise.
Or if you're going to talk about Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, let's talk about something like this guy, Shawn Michaels specifically, has had a very long career where he's had, like, if not 5-star, then close to 5-star matches. Let's talk about something there. Like, he's had so many big SummerSlam moments, and they kind of explored his comeback, which is, it's a moment. I'm like, when he came out in the jeans and it was his first match in 4 years after breaking his back and stuff. But, like, what about, like, I don't know. They revisited, like, the most iconic ladder match of all time at SummerSlam 95. Like, let's talk about that. This is the rematch of, like, what was considered the biggest and best match that the company had ever put on, like, arguably speaking.
And it's the one you don't hear about a ton because it's not the Mania one.
And it was, like, a great match. So, like, wow. Like, let's talk about this. Like, and look, I sound frustrated. And I swear to you, I do not lose sleep over this show. But, like, I think this kind of illustrates your point in like, why are we picking these things? What is the point of this? Why, like, whose fan lens am I looking at here? Because, like, this isn't my fan lens. It's not your fan lens. And maybe we don't represent all fans, but, like, there's so much you could uncover. Like, there's, like, as a producer, you find interesting stories to tell with your archival footage, and then you tell them with the right voices. And it's like you have all the fucking people there. You have a treasure trove of stuff, and then you're picking the Jon Stewart, like, moment. It's like, why? Why did we do that? There's so many other better, more interesting things that have ever happened on a SummerSlam.
And then you got to make, like, Ezekiel or Otis be like, oh, yeah, I loved when Jon Stewart came out. As if they loved when Jon Stewart came out. I guarantee you Otis did not love that moment. I would bet my life on that.
No. Or like, we got to talk about the talking heads, too, because on one hand you had Riddle.
It's like the D squad. It's really bad.
Well, on one hand you had Riddle completely in character, I think, unless he sounded so, like, I don't know if he high or concussed or both, or maybe that's how he is, how he sounds in real life. I assume he was playing a character. But then you have, like, Theory talking about, like, John Cena's my boy, like, he got me into this business, and they showed, like, pictures of him with John Cena when he was younger. I'm just like, what are we doing with our talking heads? Like, I don't know if this is kayfabe or shoot or neither or both. It's like, that was kind of perplexing. And
Yeah.
Ezekiel's there. It's like, well, I don't know what that means.
we've complained about that before, but I agree. It bothers me every time. I don't know. I don't like. Man, I don't understand the talking heads thing. I really don't know how they get these guys to record. Like if it's cohesive or if they grab people months apart. I know sometimes they showed a really quick Triple H talking head, and it's clearly not filmed for this. Is awesome. You know, Triple H has no time to film this show now or any time in the like would never do a specific talking head just for this. But they showed H from he's talking about I think the women's revolution, and he's got that like H hair he had when he refereed the Bryan Cena match at SummerSlam, like which was ugly. Like it's ugly. It's ugly older H. Like I think H now is perfect. Like bald head, big beard, couldn't love it more. I think he's found his perfect form. But that in between H, where he's got the hair and a little bit of a beard, and you're just like, okay, this instantly dates this because I know this is what H looked like 8 years ago. So I don't like this first off. And like also everyone looks. There's just no. It's like this is old. This isn't. You're just putting parts together to make it work. Like I know This Is Awesome is not a priority, but yeah, these bad talking heads, weird mix of characters, like I don't know, it just lends itself to the disjointed nature of this whole sort of process.
Well, I mean, like I understand if Triple H doesn't want to sit down in an interview in 2022 to talk about like
especially these days. He's a busy man these days. So.
To talk about Jon Stewart interfering in a major match at SummerSlam. Like I understand like hey, he talked about this like 4 years ago. The opinion doesn't change. Just fucking do it. There was a similar one with Shane McMahon talking about like jumping off shit, or maybe he's talking about the Undertaker's entrance, or both, or neither. And it's like the same Shane McMahon clip from like 5 years ago.
Yeah, they didn't get Shane to come to the studio and record something new. You can just tell.
Yeah, exactly. So like I forgive them a little bit for that, but. The wrestlers they choose, and also like the execution of the new talking heads. Like they went for a certain style and certain like approach, but every one of them sound like they're talking in the middle of like a very empty warehouse.
So just low production quality as well, you would say.
It's just
having
like,
filmed a few of these in your day.
They all sound like they're echoing, and it's just like, guys, you have a state of the art like filming production services, like, and we're filming in like what I imagine was like the Performance Center. Like anyone who's ever filmed knows that that's not conducive for interviewing because it's just going to sound like hollow. You're in the middle of like a warehouse because that's what it is. So anyway,
it's bad. It's bad. It's not a great show, but I will. We've talked mostly about the first episode, which is called Most Awesome SummerSlam Moments, which again certainly is not the most awesome, but that's the way they label it. The one thing, Walt, that I did enjoy about this show is the second episode, which we also watched for this episode we're recording here, is Most Awesome Superstar Entrances. So at least that let us talk about entrances. And I feel like you and I looked at this and said, well, worst case scenario, we can do entrances for 10 minutes. So that's good. And I will say that lends itself a little more to the conceit behind this show. Like the SummerSlam thing was clearly like rushed to get it out around SummerSlam time, and to capitalize on the biggest party of the summer. The entrances, we get to like revisit actual moments. Like I feel like it's a little more objectively interesting than just picking moments from 30 years of SummerSlam.
I think the most interesting parts of that, even though, were just listening to Jimmy Hart talk about the creation of the songs and going behind the scenes. Like that's why you make content, is to take people behind the scenes and learn more about their favorite things. It's like that's why the Bruce Pritchard podcast does like millions of downloads. People want to hear that shit. It's like that was so like, give me more of that. Tell me that Jimmy Hart is like pretending to be the female like the female singer in Shawn Michaels' theme. He did
the "Oh Shawn," right?
It sounds like he's the backup singer, and for the longest time. Well, I mean, you also take it with a grain of salt, I guess, too. But
Jimmy Hart would never lie to us.
If that's even half true, that's still more interesting than anything else I've heard.
Yeah, the Jimmy Hart stuff is great. I know Jim Johnston is persona non grata lately, and they've had arguments about money and rights to songs and all that stuff. But it would have been great to hear from Jim Johnston too, because entrances are calling it entrances and not themes adds another layer to it. Like, I mean, the theme is certainly the most important part of an entrance, but at the same time, if you're going to talk about someone's entrance, you'd like to see them do more than just walk out to the ring. You'd like to see something happen along the way. So the Jimmy Hart stuff on the themes was great. Like, I love Jimmy's background on that. I love I knew he was involved in a lot of this because I know when he went to WCW, he did a lot of themes as well. But like you said, it's wonderful to hear him actually give you insight and information you did not have when watching the show. What a novel concept to give us something new that we hadn't heard before.
Yeah, or if we're going to talk about people's entrances, let's just focus on the best version of it. Talking about the Undertaker's entrance for the 5 millionth time is all well and good.
That's so awe-inspiring. He comes down to the ring and the lights are out and there's yeah, we fucking get it.
So can we let's distill what's the best version of it? What was the greatest? You know what I mean? Because otherwise it's just a montage of people talking about Undertaker entrances kind of in a vacuum, even though you can point to specific examples. I don't need anyone telling me about the Undertaker's entrance, how it makes them feel, generally speaking,
Yeah, I liked it. It was good. It was scary. That doesn't mean anything. That means nothing. And I don't think Taker's entrance is even I get that you need to mention it because it's Taker, but he's not the person I think of when I think about entrance. I think about him in the way you're talking about. They're all pretty similar. They're all, there's not a ton of variety there. It's good. It's always a B plus, It's always solid, but it's not it's ever going to surprise you. Surprises are H or Austin sometimes, or they talked about the Brood. I guess the Brood was pretty rote at the same time, but then Edge brought it back. You have to sort of punctuate it, like you said, with something unique, with something that stood out, with one moment, with one time when a guy or girl came out and it actually meant something. I think that's. Otherwise, you're just talking in generalities, and it doesn't go anywhere.
Right, and I think that's a great way to phrase it. That's how I felt about 90% of this. Is man, when you saw Triple H spit that water, man, you knew it was time. Your days were numbered. It's
you knew it was time for a Triple H match.
It's okay, that doesn't mean that's just meaningless. Sorry, but also, this is something that I will not go too deep on this and excavate too much, but because I think this is something that we, as a podcast and experts in the field, should do ourselves, since we talk about it a lot, is give me criteria why this was great. Don't just tell me how it made you feel. If we're really analyzing these things, give me the anatomy of a great entrance and then tell me why these fit. But then you don't really do that in this. You just say entrances are cool and here are some of them.
I know some people listening have heard us talk about this before and rail against WWE, and I know they're going for low, easy, simple, straightforward content here. They're not reinventing the wheel, to say the least. So we are asking for them something they're never going to give us, which is effort on these. But that still said, you're 1,000% right. Remind me that this entrance was at Mania. Remind me this entrance was for a match against The Rock. Remind me that often the guy did this, but here he did that. The Shawn Michaels entrance at WrestleMania 12, for that reason, is so great. I think that's probably the best solo entrance ever. Singular entrance of all time, because you didn't know it was coming. Michaels already has a good theme, a whole good vibe. When he comes out, it's already an event in and of itself. But when he comes down on that zip line and Vince is out there screaming his head off, and it's for the main event for an Iron Man match at WrestleMania, that all combines to make it the best entrance. It's cool for 7 different reasons. Talk about those 7 reasons. You got 5 minutes of stuff right there.
Also, I don't know if you remember this the way I do, but they were building to a grander and grander entrance through his WrestleMania season. Because I remember in the In Your House before, he came out on top of the dub house literal house entrance. And like that was like, whoa, what a spectacle this is. It's like they started to
How did he
plant
get
that
down?
seed. He had like a little rope on it, and he like kind of like swung off the
Oh, all
roof.
right.
It's like, why was he the first one to ever think of that? I don't know, but that was great. And also, it was his moment. Like all the context matters for that. So like, yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I'm not trying to fucking rewrite the show here, but like, neither are you. But it's just like, yeah, there's just so many different ways to go with it. But instead, we kind of got this like hollow experience revisiting things for no reason. And I take offense to that. I take that person, for that reason, I take that person.
My hot take too in watching this, and we can maybe have an argument about this. There really weren't even entrances in the 80s, like there were people, I mean, there were literal entrances, people came down to the ring, but like, I know themes weren't really a thing until the mid 80s, like, and they sort of became more of a thing in the late, but like, I when you watch it, like, they mentioned DiBiase on this, and like, DiBiase, great theme song, one of the best theme songs of all time, suits his character so well. His entrance is he walks down to the ring with Virgil, like, he doesn't really, where do you draw the line between entrance and just, like, I guess they're all literally that, but like, where do you draw the line between something that matters and something that's just a guy coming out to a cool song?
I think that's a great point. You're right. That's a song. It's not like.
You got to do something, like you got to pose. You got to have like. I just don't think I don't think they were thought of as entrances in that way back then.
No, I mean, like the fact that I think you just nailed it. Is that people didn't actually have music when they walked to the ring for a long time. It's like it's a pretty big
Hogan
miss.
was one of the first guys, right?
I think so, yeah.
I'm sure Terry would say he was the first guy to ever get an entrance of all time, but I think there is some validity to that.
Right, and so, yeah, I mean, that being said, though, I mean, like, there are some iconic 80s entrances. It's just like, DiBiase's was not one of those. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Ted.
But, yeah, Ultimate Warrior.
Yes, there we go.
No arguments here.
And I will say, it was wild to watch this. And, they talk about Warrior and the entrances that they bring him up specifically. And he gets a real short segment. But there's, a minute or two of the talking heads talking very politely about Warrior. What a guy, what a legend, what a, character. And that was jarring for me just because I'm so used to, on these WWE docs, just burying Warrior or ignoring him entirely. So hearing everyone go, Warrior was good, made me pause for a second and go, oh, well, okay, I forgot we're nice to we like Warrior now, okay.
Yeah, he made his amends right before his death, and I think his wife, his wife works there.
I think
still?
So. In some like outreach, philanthropy style capacity. So.
I thought she was a writer.
Or maybe she's a writer too. I thought there was I thought she was hired to do stuff like. You might be right. She might be a writer. Who the hell knows?
But yeah, to your point, it was pretty jarring because they literally did a documentary to shit on this guy many years ago.
Well, as we sort of wrap up here, let's stay on entrances because I don't want to talk about This Is Awesome anymore. What's your favorite entrance? Like, you can pick an obvious one, you can pick a specific one, you can talk about just a general person coming out. Like, what comes to mind when you think of that?
Yeah, I think the easiest answer, and I'm not trying to take the easy way out here, but like, it's got to be Austin, right?
I think so. I mean. I have a, tell me, I mean, just talk about why you like Austin so much, and then I'll throw mine at you.
Well, they did bring this up in the doc with, like, they showed the Mankind Rock Raw moment where he put the seats in the butts, or the butts in the seats. You can keep that in.
Friend of the show, Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He put butts in the seats because he won the title, but, like, that Austin pop was just, like, I'm glad they added that. Like, I would have been upset if they didn't add that moment. Because talk about, like, that guy eliciting a reaction from a crowd. Like, that was pretty... That right there kind of sums up, to me, why that guy's theme was so... Theme, entrance, etc., like, the best.
And he was the kind of guy, he didn't have a ton of bells and whistles on the way out to the ring usually. I mean, well, like, I guess he sometimes did. Sometimes he, when he came out on the ATV or when he came out on the beer truck, like, those are that singular moment we're talking about, that, like, defines him. But, often, like, the whole hook was the glass breaking and him coming out being menacing. Like, he had sort of But that fits the Austin character so perfectly. Like in my head, even watching the clip of him hitting, before he hits Rock with a chair and Mankind wins the belt, I always pictured Austin running down to the ring. But I think he was not. I think he was hurt at the moment, but he just like sort of ambles down to the ring even then. I was laughing because I was like, man, like Austin really does not run down to the ring. I know he wasn't a runner at that point anyway, but like even when he has a purpose, he still walks to get to where he needs to be. And like I like that was consistent about his character. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, gun to my head, I'm saying that, but I think there's a lot more to unravel here, which we should do for an episode.
Yes.
Whether or not we shit on someone else's attempt to do it in the process.
Well, I want to say real quick, the one I like that this reminded me of, and I don't like the wrestler at all, but you have to respect the entrance, is Goldberg. Like, talk about an entrance being like basically the whole character, like the theme, the pyro, the whole build up in the back. Like back when that was a thing, the crowds were so hot for it. It was truly special. No one else had that sort of presentation. Like it really put a stamp on this guy. You have to watch this guy. Like he just is a force of nature and you cannot look away. And like I think just when WCW did things right back then, they just hit, the 700-foot home runs. And I think Goldberg is the best example of that. Like, they made a guy out of whole cloth, and they made him special just by the way they put him on screen and presented him to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, some would say he peaks at his entrance.
Yeah, well, I would certainly say that for sure.
But, talk about, I think they interviewed Bischoff, and he's like, yeah, we wanted to give this guy a big fight feel. I'm like, you nailed it, because that's exactly how I felt every time this guy came in the ring from 1997 to 1998. And then the small touches they kept adding, and it evolved very well over time. And I think a lot of people only remember the finished product, but I'm being a fan back then and watching. Oh, now we're adding pyro. Oh, now he's breathing the pyro in and out. Oh, now he's doing uppercuts, and now he's walking with security. These were all things that organically added week to week to build this guy's thing. So yeah, if you said Goldberg has the best entrance too, I wouldn't argue it. The only thing that I would deduct points is not having a great theme that lives outside of wrestling, because there's a lot of great entrances that have great themes that part of me also just likes listening to them separately. Oh, one thing I did have to note about this, though, is here's an unpopular take, but I think the NWO Wolfpack is kind of lame.
Yeah, it's incredibly of a time and a place. It does not work anymore. They should have just talked about the NWO regular, or Hogan's Voodoo Child theme. Those are so much better than Wolfpack. Well, sorry to friend of the show, Chris Holcomb. He's going to hear this and he's going to cry.
Thank you for beating me to that. Yeah, I just you're seeing them talk about it, and you're seeing the entrances, and I'm just what the fuck is this? I know who was in the group, and I remember it being really over, but I'm why was Sting and Lex and Macho Man and Conan and Kevin Nash all in a group that was called the NWO but wasn't the NWO? In hindsight, I'm this is just this is really kind of lame.
Yeah.
And I don't think the theme was really that good either.
No, I mean it's late '90s rap stuff. It's white guy rapping kind of. Conan obviously is not white, but everyone else is very, very white in that group, and but it's trying to capture that sort of dynamic of it's cool now, and we're trying to be hip and with it. But hip and with it from 1999 just went out of date by 2000. It was very, very over very quickly, and even when they're talking about it, and this is awesome, they can't help but shit on Lex being in the group. They can't they're all scoffing Luger was in the group. It's well, if you think it's funny that Luger was the third most important guy in the group, so if that makes you scoff, you probably don't really like the group. So you probably shouldn't say they were so good, because clearly you think they were silly.
Well, yeah, wasn't that a beat of it? Eric Bischoff was was it Sting, maybe Lex? I don't know.
Yeah.
We can't remember it, then it probably wasn't that awesome.
Yeah. Or if you have to pretend you don't remember it because you're embarrassed to talk about it, also not a good time.
Very true.
But yeah, so I think we can agree, looping back real quick, this is the only reason to watch this show, right? Is because sometimes there are fun conversations that can spark from the topics they bring up. But that's not a testament to the show itself. They don't do a good job of actually sparking those conversations within the 30 minutes. It's just sort of nice to also, when it's over, think about other things about wrestling related that you enjoy.
It's nice background for when I'm thinking about the things I actually give a shit about in wrestling.
Yes. Not a good thing to say, but I guess part and parcel. I know, so when I watch things like this, it does make me think about, the docs that they used to do a lot of, the 24s and the 365s, and certainly not Chronicle, but some of the other longer term ones we used to watch in the early days of the network. And I get a longing for those. Like, oh man, it was so nice when we just watched 30 minutes of Kevin Owens backstage. Like, that's so much better than this.
Yeah, give us more of that. That worked. What was wrong with that?
I don't know.
Too expensive? Like, I don't know. Sure, but then. Why are you doing this then?
I have no idea. But it's there. We didn't even talk about Greggy. Well, we forgot to talk about Greggy. But it's my main point on Greggy is I don't understand. Like, I know we said this already as jokingly for the Talking Heads. I'm being totally serious. You should be the host of This Is Awesome. I'm not. I don't think I have a face for TV. I think you're a much more handsome man. I feel like if you showed up and were on the show, it would be the exact same show. Like, oh, this handsome man is yelling about wrestling. Like, what does Greggy have that you don't have?
Well, Greggy has a following and a niche audience that is not wrestling, and
do you think they're coming to this show for Greggy though?
I don't know, but what? I guess Michael Rappaport was busy this week, so. I'm not trying to shit on that idea of someone bringing their organic marketing, blah blah blah, but I don't know. Is anyone following someone to a wrestling program like that? Otherwise, why not just use Corey Graves? Why not use Xavier Woods? They're extremely talented people, and they were in this. They could have been adjacent, or in some cases were in the show. Just use them. You're paying. They're on retainer already, and they're good, and people like them, and they're wrestlers, so it makes sense.
Yeah, Xavier Woods would have been perfect for this. And the show is basically filmed like the interstitials, the introductions and all that are filmed like a Zoom camera anyway. So just put Xavier Woods in front of a camera, let him talk for 5 minutes. Bam, you got your intros. Do a little interstitials. That takes 10 more minutes. Boom, you're done. Xavier's out the door.
Someone's scripting him, so he wouldn't even have to come up.
And he's a performer. He's better than Greggy at performing. I'll tell you that much. So.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever. Greggy's not the problem, but Greggy is not the solution either.
I would agree. I mean, this show's flawed, and I don't think I could not have done a better job.
I disagree, but it's it's nice. It's nice of you to say that. You're you're a man of the people. You don't want to puff yourself up too much.
Right. Well, that's why I don't host TV shows too. But.
Well, if you want to watch WWE, This Is Awesome. It's on Peacock. We wouldn't recommend it, but as we said, if you need background noise and you love wrestling with all your heart, I suppose there are worse ways to spend 35 minutes. But not a treat. Does not get the stamp of approval. And better luck next time, Peacock. So, what are you going to do?
Not a treat. That's all that sums it up.
But if you want to hear about other treats, many other things we've covered on the show are indeed treats. You can find them all at our archives at awesometruth.libsyn.com. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Everywhere podcasts are delivered, we are there. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at awesometruthpod. Well, thanks for stomaching 2 episodes of This Is Awesome. We have some good things on the docket coming up for the next few months, so I think we're going to be free from this. I think this was our network filler episode for hopefully for the end of the year.
Yeah, this is just a bridge to get from one good thing to the other.
Yep, that's right. Well, that's what you got to do sometimes. That's why the network is there. So we're glad it exists, but we don't like it at all.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you like us. Thank you all so much for listening, and remember, the truth will set you free.